Hello and welcome to chapter 4 of our fall book review on The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. I'm Jennifer Sheridan, the Family Services Coordinator here at the Coleman Center in Petal, Mississippi. And today we are going to discuss chapter 4, Kill the Butterflies, Integrating Memory for Growth and Healing. I thought this was one of the most creative titles. And if you read the chapter, you were able to see where they came up with the title for the chapter. But if not, we'll get into it, and it will not be a shock to you. So let's scan through real quick the first few chapters of the book and hit those highlights again. The introduction's all about surviving and thriving, and really making our children more emotionally aware is exactly what we're all about here at the Coleman Center and in this book, The Whole Brain Child. So chapter 1 is all about parenting with the brain in mind. Really, the whole book is. So we're talking about integration, meaning coordinating and balancing these different regions of our brain. So the first two, chapter 2 and chapter 3, talk about the different regions of our brain and what we're getting from each of those different areas. Because we know that an integration of all 4 different sections, the left brain and the right brain, and then the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain, as Daniel describes it. Really, we see an integration of all these brings about health, brings about emotional stability, brings about really development that we see a struggle in with our kids who come from hard places, but also just the struggle of childhood, developing these parts of the brain, regardless of our child's circumstances. We see that the integration of this can be a challenge. And so we always want to keep this in mind. Daniel describes the brain and body as like we are in a river of well-being. And on one bank is chaos, one bank is rigidity. And so you can find more about that in chapter 1. In chapter 2, it's all about integrating the left and the right brain. So that left logical side and then that right emotional side. That right emotional side, remember, is there from birth. And so that's the one we're accessing immediately. And then we are developing our left brain. We're developing this logic and all of these sorts of things. And so I'm so thankful that we are getting to see this. Oh, let's see. See the Zoom. Okay, are there slides I should see? Yes, you should see some slides. So let me make sure I have this shared correctly. Okay, you should now be able to see these slides. Sorry about that. Yeah. Let's see if that worked. Okay. All right, perfect. So now we're seeing these slides. We're in chapter 2, integrating that right and left brain. And we got our first 2 strategies. Now we're going to learn about 12 strategies in the Whole Brain Child book. And so we see here in chapter 2, we're getting our first 2 strategies. And our first one is connect and redirect. So we're connecting with that right brain, our right brain, to our child's right brain. And then we are redirecting in a different way. So if we're upset about something, we're connecting emotionally, we're recognizing those emotions in our kiddos. And then we're bringing in some lessons, we're bringing in some discipline after we have connected emotionally. So it's not before. I'm not going to explain it logically and then think, oh, my child is just going to understand this and then everything's going to be great and grand. No, that's not how that works, right? So we're going to connect with our right brain, with our kiddo, and then we are going to come in later, maybe later that day, maybe the next day. And then we're going to talk about what kind of brain lesson can we learn, and then how can we discipline our child in order so they can learn a better way of coping with those stresses. And then our second strategy that Daniel and Tina give us is name it to tame it. Sometimes just naming these emotions, naming and being aware of what's going on with our kiddo will help them to tame their emotions and learn how to regulate themselves. And also, I would say, learn how to co-regulate with others, because sometimes when our kiddos come from hard places, have experienced trauma, have experienced early neglect, they learn how to regulate. They learn what it's like to self-soothe. They don't learn how to co-regulate with someone else. And as a caregiver, as a parent, we want our kiddos to know how to regulate with others because they increase that attachment. They increase all this dopamine that we get when we connect with others. All of these things are a learned skill. And so if we have learned how to do this all on our own and we're not interested in doing this with someone else, we really miss out on some of the good parts that we can get when we co-regulate with someone else, a trusted caregiver. And so then let's take a look. Chapter 3 was all about integrating the upstairs and the downstairs brain. Now the upstairs brain is the sophisticated problem-solving thinking machine. Unfortunately, this prefrontal lobe and cortex does not get fully developed until around age 24, 25. And so we've got a long time, it's a long childhood to go with an underdeveloped brain. Now it's underdeveloped because of their age, not because of anything that we've done as parents or caregivers. It's simply part of our biology that this front part, this part of our upstairs brain does not get that full growth and development until our mid-20s. So what is fully developed is our downstairs brain. Now, our downstairs brain, remember, that one is full of the brainstem, the limbic region. It contains that amygdala, which is like the watchdog of our body. It helps to keep us aware of what's going on, helps us to keep alert. And so what we see here is when that amygdala gets activated, bam, 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 something's in danger, I'm in danger, I'm in danger, I've got to get out. Excuse me. It tells our body we must fight or we've got to fly. We've got to flee the situation in order to keep ourselves safe. And so we need some vertical integration if we are going to help strengthen our amygdala, help it to differentiate between what is actually putting me in danger and then when should I think about this situation and say, I'm not really in danger. I don't really need to fight anybody right now. Maybe I have another need that needs to get met. So then we differentiated between an upstairs tantrum and a downstairs tantrum. Now, an upstairs tantrum, it's much more intentional. It's controlled. We see they get the thing, whatever they're asking for, whatever we're trying to get. They get the thing, and then we see a flip, and we're able to calm down. And it's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde moment, where you're like, all of a sudden, you're really upset, and you're like, oh no, they're really upset. And then in the next moment, they're done. They're fine. They look happy now that they've gotten the thing. Well, that is an upstairs tantrum. They have really manipulated you as a parent or as a caregiver in order to get what they want. Now, this is hard to differentiate if we're not paying attention. We're distracted, we're busy, we've got lots of things to do. Sometimes it's difficult to differentiate between this upstairs brain tantrum and a downstairs brain tantrum. So if we maintain firm boundaries and clear communication, that's the best way we can help coach them through coming back to a sense of calm, coming back to a sense of peace to get out of an upstairs brain tantrum. Now, a downstairs brain tantrum, that takes us to a different place. Brains get hijacked by the amygdala. We are looking for some nurturing, some comfort, some care. And once they're calm, then we can talk about appropriate behaviors. But just like the connect and redirect, we meet that need emotionally first. And then we go into how can we teach and discipline through this opportunity of learning so that next time they'll understand how to get their needs met in a more appropriate way. So we're going to calm, and then we're going to get to how we can do that appropriately. So chapter 3, our 3 strategies we've learned in chapter 3 are all about engage, don't enrage. So we're going to ask questions. We're going to look for alternatives to negotiate. And then strategy number 4 is all about using it or losing it. So sometimes we've got to exercise our kiddos' upstairs brain so they can learn these new ways of thinking. They don't have to rely on this downstairs brain. We can get them to utilize some breathing exercises. Maybe there's some yoga or stretching that we can do with them so they can learn how to manage the stress that's inside of their bodies. And then we want to let them practice making those decisions. So number 5 is all about move it or lose it, getting that body moving. Oftentimes this can help our kiddos from launching in. It can prevent them from launching into a significant tantrum. Sometimes it might be us saying, look, I see you might be getting upset. I can see that you're maybe getting a little frustrated, or you're about to do something that maybe is a little scary. Why don't we go outside and jump on the trampoline for 5 minutes to get some of those wiggles out? Maybe we'll go take a walk and you can tell me what's going on at school and why things are feeling a little yucky when you start math class or when you start doing your English work. And so we do that, we get that blood moving. By getting the blood moving in the body, it's also moving in the brain and helps us to think more clearly. So let's jump into chapter 4. Now, chapter 4, Kill the Butterflies, is really all about integrating memory. And we're going to talk about 2 different types of memory. But before we do that, let's discuss a couple of myths that Daniel and Tina discuss in the book. And this is just to highlight some things that we think, and I think I grew up thinking these things because this was the message that was communicated to me about memory. So myth number 1 is memory is just a mental filing cabinet, right? All I have to do is think really hard. I have to sometimes squint my eyes and maybe put my hands on my head, and I'll remember exactly the thing that happened, that date someone told me, or that specific circumstance that we all experience. And all I have to do is pull that file folder out of the filing cabinet in my brain, right? Well, that's actually not how memory works. Memory is all about associations that we make and the neurons firing at the same time another neuron is firing, and then they become integrated. So myth number 2, memory is like a photocopy machine. This ties together. It's not. Our memories are not exactly how it is. Number 1, we all have a perception of how things have happened, but also we have integrated memory into our brain based on the circumstances that were happening at the time and based on the circumstances when I am accessing these memories. So an example of this might be, I'll give you an example from my childhood. So I remember my parents went on a date night and they left us with a babysitter. Now this was unusual because my parents didn't do that a lot, but they did. They had something going on. They got us a babysitter, sweet little babysitter. She brought some gum and she probably thought, well, this will be great. This is a great idea. Bring this gum for these kiddos. And it was that soft, chewy gum that kids love, very sugary. I popped a piece of gum in my mouth. I thought this was so exciting. It's green apple gum. Well, I got sick. And we know that oftentimes when we get sick and experience something, we never want to eat that thing again. Well, since then, I have never eaten anything green apple flavored. I will ask people if they hand me candy, I will say, does this taste like green apple? Because I won't eat it. I had such a negative reaction to that I won't do it again, even though I may actually like a green apple flavored candy. But I had such a bad experience because I got sick right then, right? So the circumstances surrounding that have now come into my memory. Now, is everything green apple terrible? Or was I sick because of that gum? Probably not. I was a kiddo then. And we know kids just get sick. And so one thing that happens is, just like my memory of getting sick when I ate that piece of candy, our memories like this that seem innocuous, that seem just everyday run of the mill, if we're in a circumstance where our brain encodes that as a negative memory, then it no longer is how everyone else sees it. It's how I see it. And if I see it as a negative memory, a memory that made me feel scared, a circumstance that made me feel scared or upset or maybe fearful, then now I have encoded that in my brain and I have attached that to fearfulness in my brain. So let's talk about implicit memory and explicit memory, because all of this ties together. So we've got implicit memory is all about these automatic things that we do. We've learned how to do this, and we don't even realize this is what we're doing. Now, Daniel talks about changing a diaper, changing your baby's diaper, how you don't even think about it, you just do it. I thought about how when I drive home, sometimes I will realize, like, oops, I don't even remember driving past the library or taking a right onto my street. I just do it. It's so automatic. It becomes part, it's so ingrained in my brain how to put my foot on the gas pedal, how to brake at a stop sign, how to look both ways before I cross the street with my car. All of these things have become so a part of my implicit memory that I now no longer have to think, okay, in order to make my car go, I need to push my right foot onto the gas pedal, but not too hard, not too soft, just the right. No, it's really just part of my body system, right? So we do this as humans all during our first 18 months. Our first 18 months, we are encoding implicit memories over and over and over again. That's all we're doing. We're not creating explicit memories. So explicit memories are all about very specific moments in time. So specific events that have happened. So I talk about that incident with the green apple gum that my sweet babysitter gave me. Well, that's an explicit memory. But what happened is I also integrated that with an implicit memory as an adult. And I have decided, even though I'm sure I got sick eating that green apple gum and I was convinced, oh, it was green apple, that's what did it. Now, as an adult, I have told that story so many times over and over again that I'm confident it really wasn't the gum. I was probably just sick as a kid. But I've integrated that by saying, okay, my implicit memory is, oh, can never eat green apple anything. But my explicit memory says I've recalled this and I have created this narrative. And now I can say, using this upstairs part of my brain, that now I can eat a piece of green apple something and I probably am not going to get sick because it's no longer part of a negative memory. Now I've integrated that and said, you know, I probably was just sick as a kiddo. And so I can choose it or not. It depends on my mood that day. We are going to learn today a little bit more about creating these stories and creating these narratives, kind of like we talked about when we name it or tame it, connect and redirect really hints to that, but really creating a narrative that helps to integrate the story so that our kids can make sense of pain, our kids can make sense of chaos, and their brain is able to organize this in a way where they feel more safe. They feel more safe in their bodies, they feel more safe in their family, in their home, and out in the places where they have experienced a negative experience that has integrated, that has encoded in their brain, in their implicit memory, as something negative that they need to avoid. Now, excuse me, Daniel and Tina, they describe mom and the son talking about swim lessons. The son, they think, is going to be excited because he gets to go to these new swim lessons with his friend Henry. And the boy in the story says, oh, no, I'm not interested in this. And you and I, if you have kids, you have experienced this before. Your child wants to do something fun 1 week, and the next week now it's no longer fun, right? Or 1 year, this is so fun, maybe something negative happens, and then the very next year you think, oh, they're going to think this is great. And they say, oh, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Oh, I actually don't want to go there. You think, oh, this is so confusing. How am I supposed to know what they want? What happens is oftentimes our brains, because we have not integrated our implicit and explicit memories, we keep going back to those implicit memories and we don't even realize it. It's why trauma can sneak up on us. Oftentimes I'll talk with parents, they don't even realize they have experienced this trauma, and it has affected them until they have kids. And then their kiddo experiences something, and it pulls back this implicit memory that has been encoded in their brains. Their neurons have attached, and they say, I didn't even realize that was a thing. I didn't even realize that affected me. And so our kiddos do this can integrate this with help from this little part of our brain called the hippocampus. So the hippo, as I like to call it, takes images, emotions, all these sensations that our body experiences and different parts of our brains process, and it helps to integrate these so we can make sense. It's kind of like puts together a puzzle. It's the puzzle maker of our brain. And so if we can teach our kiddos how to really manipulate and control this hippocampus, it can help these implicit memories, whether they're good or bad, to become explicit memories so that they can understand and regulate their emotions when they are entering into a similar situation. So Tina and Son, she does this through narrative work. Narrative work is really one of the most powerful things that we can utilize because narratives, they're really part of most of our cultures. Sometimes we have lost this sense, but really, I would say from ancient times, our cultures have relied on narratives, relied on stories. We tell stories in order to make sense of a really crazy and chaotic world. And if you think back to being a kid and you've experienced some hard times, those were some chaotic and chaotic experiences that you had. And oftentimes, if we didn't have someone tell those stories with us, we've had to create our own narrative about it. We don't want our kiddos to have to do that. We want to create this narrative with them. So what we're going to do here is we are going to take this story and we are going to tell the story as much as possible. So, but before we do this, we're going to halt and use this acronym to help assess what's going on. So if I was Tina and that was my son and he was saying, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't want to go to swim lessons, even though I've begged for swim lessons for to take with my best friend Henry for the past 2 months. I now no longer want to do it. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is say, I'm going to assess the situation and say, are they hungry? Are they just angry about something? Did they not get the right cookies in their lunchbox? And they're just mad they didn't get the chocolate chip cookies and they got the vanilla wafer cookies that they didn't even like to eat. Are they feeling lonely? Do they need some connection? Do they need an opportunity for us to cuddle, to provide some healthy, safe touch? Is that what they're really looking for? And are they tired? Is this just simply their body is feeling tired? And so the way that they're going to communicate this need is to be against everything. Now, if you have kids, you have experienced tired exhaustion, maybe during the holidays, maybe during the summer when we start staying up late and we really don't have much of a routine. Oftentimes, this can be, those 4 things are an easy fix and can help prevent this deep-seated discussion about what's going on and what we don't like and what we don't want to do when we sure thought they wanted to do this. And so we're going to look at those 4 things: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, before we get into, okay, let's look at this narrative. Let's look at maybe they have a memory of something that is causing them some stress. So if we've evaluated all 4 of those things, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, do I remember them having a bad experience when they've done this? Now, maybe. So in the story, Tina realizes, oh yeah, her son had a bad incident and got upset. And so they started telling a story to kind of talk through what's going on. Now, there's another story attached to strategy number 6, which is use the remote control of the mind and replaying memories. And it's about a dad and a son who a son no longer wants to do the hobby because he had a negative experience earlier on. Well, what we can do is while we're telling the story, recreating the story, putting the pieces together, we can always say, you know what, we're going to tell a story. We're going to tell the story of this event that happened. And whenever you get ready and you don't want to talk about this anymore, or you want us to fast forward through maybe a scary part of the story, you just say fast forward, or you say pause, and then we pause the story just like we're watching a DVD. Now, this is an excellent way to kind of make this a little bit more fun and playful because sometimes talking about hard stuff can be very scary, can be very overwhelming. But if we give our kiddos that opportunity to say, I need to take a pause, or I just want to skip this first part and get to the end part, then I know is going to be better. Then we can allow our kids to have a little bit more control over this narrative, constructing this narrative. And so one way we can do this kind of consistently, and this is strategy number 7, is really making storytelling and narrative, creating these narratives, part of just our daily ritual. So instead of just saying, well, babe, how's your day at school? And they say, good. And you say, okay, I gotta go fix supper, which happens a lot, right? In my house, that's what happens. What we can do is we can say, tell me about what's the best thing that happened today. Maybe they'll go into a story about, something that they drew in art class, or a game that they got to play on the playground. And you ask some more questions, and you're just trying to figure out, you're just very curious about what's going on there. And who said that? Oh, okay. And then you might ask, well, what was the worst part about today? Oh, maybe it was the teacher called me out in front of class and I didn't know the answer, and then I felt like everybody laughed at me. So I might ask some more questions of like, oh, did your best friend Johnny laugh at you too? Oh, well, no, he didn't laugh at me either. Oh, okay, so Johnny didn't laugh at you, but you felt like other kids do, but not your friend Johnny, right? And then so we're creating these narratives. We're helping them piece together and really get a better sense of maybe what actually happened, right? Because sometimes we like to revise history. Sometimes we might say, everybody laughed at me in the class. Maybe it was just that one kid who tends to laugh at everybody and everything. And so we sometimes can help them make some better sense, to use this front part of their brain, to maybe use some more logic and reason to say, you know what? Actually, not everybody did. It was just like these girls over there, and they were just being so silly. And so doing this on a daily basis helps us when we enter these really significant times of our kiddos needing to recreate an implicit memory of a really negative or traumatizing event. So a lot of times kiddos who have experienced trauma, this is what they'll experience in the therapy room as well. You guys take your kiddos to see a therapist. This is a lot of times what we're doing in trauma work, is creating this narrative so we can make sense. Not so we can just relive the trauma, but so that when this comes up, when we tell the stories again, our kiddos no longer experience it in their body, but they're experiencing it in a logical, reasonable way where they're almost detached from it, so they can see it from a different perspective, to say that did happen to me in the past, but it's not happening to me in the present. I can be present in my body. I can live in the present now in a safe way. On page 88 and 89, there's a great cartoon that you can kind of see to help explain, how do we talk about memory with our kids? I think sometimes we don't do a great job of giving them the benefit of the doubt that they can learn things. So I think that's a great way for you guys to discuss that with your kiddos and to help explain how this happens in their brain. All right, guys, next week we are going to have Chapter 5, The United States of Me, integrating the many parts of the self. So we'll be going over that chapter as well. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email me at jennifer.sheridan@petalschools.com, or you can give us a call at the Coleman Center at 601-584-4704, and we look forward to talking about Chapter 5 of Daniel Siegel's The Whole Brain Child next week. Thanks so much and have a great day.